I don't know about all that. I don't think he'd do it. I don't think it's in his nature, to be honest. Ace, go ahead. You have a hot mic, and then Nasha.
Yeah, thank you, bro. I have a rather controversial one to ask you guys. Is it the lack of backbone from the FIA, or rather desperation from them, to end the Mercedes dominance?
Oh, bloody
Take
Nora.
your
Open
pick.
it.
I would say take your pick. It's about to be so.
Can of worms there, Ace.
The saying two things can be true at once.
Yeah, that's true.
This is
I like
exactly it.
I like what you've done there, Thanos, to be fair, but I think potentially the former more than the latter, but I digress. Nasha, not waiting any longer to hear this man pick up a microphone. How are you keeping, brother?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I've been driven to drink by this scandal. That's the excuse I'm going to use, right? I would never touch a drop of alcohol in my life before today. And look what the FIA make me do. No, but I think all good points. I think really what I want to get, I missed it, and I'm sure there are some people in here who've maybe joining this space. We're in here, we're out here, couple man in this space. What's your opinion on this? Because you have previously described Christian as a gangster. So do you think that I saw rumors that it was supposed to be a 25% reduction, and they essentially negotiated that down. Obviously, rumors are rumors, but let's say there was a lick of truth in that. Do you think that despite Christian's stating that this is bad for them, this they're going to be affected, XYZ, they've never done anything wrong, do you think that they've essentially negotiated themselves into a position of relative comfort based on the crime, or do you think that at face value the punishment fits the crime? Because you're in it, so
say that last bit again. Sorry, Nasha.
I was saying you're the accountant, so do you know what I mean? So from your perspective, knowing the sport, knowing Christian, knowing the FIA, I guess question A, do you think that they've negotiated, or if they have negotiated, a punishment that is smaller than, let's say, 25%? Do you think that's a job well done, or do you think that at face value, what they've got is enough of a punishment without them needing to have negotiated it down?
Oh, Nasha with the big questions again, David Frost-esque. Let me come to your first point first on Christian Horner being a gangster. That's exactly what he's being. That's what he's been, Nasha, a gangster. He's done a very cheeky risk to reward calc and quite rightly said, you know what, if I'm assuming here that this is deliberate, and again, I can't get in Christian's Horner, potentially it is. If they have done a very cheeky risk reward calc, then Christian Horner's nailed it, because the upside that Red Bull and Max Verstappen and Christian Horner will have received on the back of winning last year's championship and winning this year's Constructors' Championship and winning this year's Drivers' Championship far outweighs the very nominal penalties. Right into your second, Nasha, about the penalty. Mate, if I were a team principal, I'd be looking at that and be saying, you know what, minor breach. Let's go to the uppermost, the highest that we can spend without incurring a major breach. That's what we're going to do. And next year, I will prepare the white paper using which I'm going to enter into some sort of negotiation with the FIA and strike up another ABA. Of course, Nasha, why wouldn't you? This is nonsense. One of my friends said it to me yesterday. If they can negotiate some sort of plea bargain or plea deal even, it just brings the sport into such disrepute. It is an absolute nonsense. Listen, if the prison sentence for murder was a month in prison, people would be dying every single day. you've got to make the punishment commensurate to the crime. And again, I can't hate back to your first point, Nasha. Again, I know people don't like Christian Horner, but as a competitor, I can't hate him as much as I hate the way that the rules are poorly structured and incentivize positively this sort of behaviour, mate. I was going to ask you a question, actually, Nasha. Let me pitch
I'm
this.
the antagonist here, bro. What do you mean? I'm licked. Whatever I say doesn't count.
Yeah, no, I agree. A fair play still.
No, I'm joking.
Go on then. I was going to ask you this year, 2.29% as a proportion of the 145 million is that 432k that the FIA have now agreed that they exceeded the budget cap by. Do you think, Nasha, that 0.29% is enough of a cost cap breach to warrant a complete stripping? If you're the FIA and you can do whatever, carte blanche, go for it. Do you think that 0.29% is sufficient to strip Max Verstappen of his title, his 2021 one?
I think that question in isolation, I think if you'd asked us with a situation without Abu Dhabi, I think there may be more people who would say no. I'm not saying that the people who would still say yes are wrong, but I think that if we were to just look at it in isolation, I don't know. We all know that that amount of money could 100% help towards winning a title, right? Mercedes didn't bring anything last year, you know, and that was their choice. But, you know, Red Bull were turning up with van after van after van up until, you know, Abu Dhabi. And who's to say that in one of those vans was a 300 grand part that could have potentially been the difference maker between him and Lewis in a season where they went down to the last race on equal points. You know, them times when Max was doing burnouts in Austria, them times when Max just about pips Lewis Hamilton to the line on older tires in Kota. Like there are situations where you could look at it as a fan and think, what would a few hundred grand less have done? We would never know, right? But I think someone said it earlier. Christian's insistence that it had no impact on car performance. Like you can't say that because you had to spend essentially. So short answer is I don't blame people for saying no, for saying yes, they should have stripped him. My long answer is we can't look at this without looking at 2 seasons worth of Red Bull light punishment or wrong punishment or fortuitous decisions going their way, if you're going to put it in the most light way. And I think that's where the anger comes from. And I think to dismiss everything that the FIA have done against Lewis, against Mercedes, in favor of Red Bull, for Red Bull, however you want to view it, I think that's the main issue at play here, in that we have a governing body who seem to be unable to enforce rules correctly or with teeth to this particular team, or have shown where doors were closed for one team, they could be open for another in other instances, if we look at the Alonso situation. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, I'm probably on the fence with that a bit, but I think context, we're angry, a lot of us, because the FIA are absolute shit show, mate, and this is, to a lot of people's eyes, and more evidence of that.
Sorry, briefly to piggyback on what Nyasha's saying, I'm gonna put to you an analogy. It's like maybe like a guy who hits his girlfriend, and you decide to only take that situation into contention and say that like, oh, but he only did it this one time. But this is a guy who has maybe been hitting his girlfriend, and people have been ignoring it. And like, as you, the person who has seen it, who has felt offended on behalf of the girlfriend, on behalf of all the women, you're just basically taking it very personal. And so this one, maybe, okay, if you can twist it, it could be justified. It still feels like huge because he's done it so many times and gotten away with it. So you kind of don't want him to get away with it again. So you want the maximum punishment possible, because it's he's done it before. He's gonna do it again because he knows he's gonna keep getting away with it. That's exactly the situation at play here. They fucked up before. They've let them get away with it. They're gonna fuck up again because at the end of the day, the results are worth the consequences are not high enough to change the pattern of behavior. Like as a kid, if your mom's not punishing you enough for bad behavior, then you're gonna keep doing bad behavior because at the end of the day, you can withstand the punishment because it's just not that big a deal.
You know, I think it's funny that we keep citing black parents and their mode of punishment. I've heard it twice, and this won't be the last time in this space. Nash, I just choose it. Corporal punishment, of course. Well, it never hurt anybody, but we're not doing that to our kids anymore, or are we? Listen, Nash, I wanted to pick at something that you said before I had. Sorry, Dan, I've been on a long thing here. Irresponsible chair cap. Right back on. Nash, you said they are unable, not but I think you said something to the effect of they appear unable to police the sport and implement the rules in a way that's consistent and fair.
I'm saying unable with my face value cap on. If I was to put how I genuinely feel and how I felt for a long time, I think it's unwilling. And I will say it's unwilling because I think we look, I hate arguments about people saying like, how can the FA be corrupt or how can the FA do X, Y, Z? Like, there are so many sporting documentaries. Go on Netflix. There's literally, I think, 3 or 4 documentaries on Netflix about sporting corruption right now. If you go on there, FIFA being taken to court for corruption right now. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that, and I'm not saying this is outright being bought by Red Bull, but is there a situation where I think we could all say that last season decisions were made for the show over sporting integrity? I don't think anyone could deny that. And I think, again, if they were to completely axe Red Bull from the championship fight, take them to the back of the grid, strip them of championships, what happens to the Austria race, the Belgium race, all of the Max Verstappen stuff that they've kind of built up over the last few years? Like, do you really want to go down that road? Cam, you watch basketball on a smaller level. You know, top players in basketball. There's a ref documentary on Netflix about a ref who was fixing games, and he said there were meetings before the season about how you couldn't give certain people fouls. He gave a certain foul, they fucking caned him for it. It's not impossible that people would look after their best interests, right? And at this point in time, Max Verstappen, Red Bull are their best interests. So is it in their best interest to punish them as much as they probably could and should? I don't think it is. I don't think it's people within the sport, F1, other fans, journalists want to label it as like tinfoil hat conspiracy shit, but it's a business decision. And I think that's, when I say unwilling, I think if I'm going to go between full Red Bull conspiracy and face value, I think they're looking after their sporting interests, of which Red Bull and Max Verstappen are considerable part of that.
Oh,
Nah, you know what? I'm good, yeah. I'm not even going to lie. I spazzed out then. I didn't even know I had that in me. That is crazy.
Not bad, sir. Not bad. You should set up a podcast one of these days, Nash.
You know what? Yeah, I might just do that.
You'd be good at it still. Let's sell some merch whilst you're there. Dasha, where can I get that shirt, by the way, whilst we're in the space, big man? Because I've seen it, but I don't know the URL offhand. Could you just remind me, please, for the avoidance of that?
It's quickstopf1.com. You can go get all kinds of merch on there. Did you see that someone bought a little cap today on your website?
I have not seen that.
Okay, well,
was that on the Cameron F1 store? Let's
Yeah,
go.
good. Got myself a little trucker cap. So yeah, thank you for that merch. But if you want to get Quickstop F1 merch, quickstopf1.com, and obviously make sure you're following Cam up in here. Great spaces, great podcasts, great live streams. Enjoy that. So yeah.
Oh, legend, Nasha. You wouldn't know that me and my brother over there are close. Jay from Wolfpack Performance, get your ass up here, big man. Get your ass up here. Thanos, apologies for the long thing.
No, that's cool. It's nice. I was going to comment on something you said about Red Bull and how they play hard and fast with the rules. And you know what? It pains me to say this, but I can't blame Red Bull for nothing they do. And it would be naive of anyone to blame Red Bull for the things that they've done or have been accused to do, because at the end of the day, they're in a competitive sport and they're trying to look. You're going to look for every possible every opportunity you can to put yourself in a more advantageous position. At the end of the day, this comes down to a governance. This is all governance, nothing to do with Red Bull doing what they did. If the purposeful, a lot of the things that we've seen taking place in the last, especially like we saw last year in his battle with Lewis, is because the stewards allowed him to drive in that manner. If they had punished him like the first 3 times he ran Lewis off track, do you think he would have done it a fourth time? No, he wouldn't have, because he would have assessed the situation and thought to himself, well, you know what? I've been penalized 3 times for doing the exact same thing. I can't keep doing this because it's going to cost me and it's going to cost me. So he's going to have to adjust to that. But what we find is it seems like the stewards and the FIA are adjusting to Red Bull rather than having Red Bull and Max adjust to them. So the problem here is it's on their side. I don't like Red Bull, period. I don't like nothing about them, period. But at the same time, I understand the whole thought process of what they're doing, and I can't fault them for that. Because if you can do something and get an advantage, and no one, and even though what you're doing is deemed as unsporting or illegal, and no one punishes you for it, you're going to keep on doing it until someone decides, okay, that's enough. I need to put a stop to this. Poor governance is why we are where we are right now. That's it.
But hold on, Thanos.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody's stolen your phone. This isn't the person that I know as Thanos.
Yeah, you know,
Thanos, Anna, that me did say to you a long time, my youth.
Look, man. It's I'm in one of the multiverses. This is a Thanos from one of the many multiverses that's out there. The real one will come back eventually. At some point, I'll gain sanity and come back. But in truth, we do agree on that part. We can't really turn around and say this is on Red Bull. This is on the FIA and their lack of governance. It just seems to be fleet-footed. All right, case in point, right? After what happened in Abu Dhabi last year, one of the things they put in place for better race direction was to put in 2 different race directors, right? But has that not created more problems? Has it solved anything? Because 1 week you have Eduardo Freitas, he does something. Then the next race you have Neil Vitches, and the same incident occur, and Neil Vitches does something completely different to what Eduardo Freitas did last week. Now you have the drivers thinking, okay, so which is it? They don't know which is which, because 2 people are view the situation completely different. So what they've done now the race director for the remainder of the season is Niels Vittich. Eduardo Freitas is gone because it created problem. It didn't solve anything. So they created another problem that they didn't need to create. So we're in this position because of poor governance. And let me go back to the whole penalty that they've been given. It's not a penalty for a team that prior to last year had no problem spending on average 400 million per year. Giving them a fine of $7 million isn't really that big of a problem to them. It's not really that big of a problem. It would have been the better thing to have done was that fine should have been levied against the actual budget. So 7 million, we're going to fine you 7 million, and that 7 million is coming out of your budget along with the reduction in wind tunnel time. But you talk about, I'm going all over the place. I'm going back, rewinding steps. So you talk about a team would look at the rules and play hard and decide to do X, Y, Z with the rules. The way the penalties are listed for a minor breach, it makes that easy decision for a team principal if they want to do that, because they already know the first step is to go into an ABA with the FIA, and what are the penalties under a minor breach that will be negotiated in an ABA? It's a reprimand, the monetary fine, the reduction in wind tunnel and safety time, and I think the next one is the exclusion from practice events, but cannot be from the race. And there's six, and remember there's six possible penalties. The other one is the reduction in the deduction in points from drivers and constructors. I don't remember the other one. So the two more severe one have been taken off the board. So you as a team principal can look at that and factor in, well, you know what? If I spend an extra 5 million, these are the 4 likely penalties I'll be able to get. What's the opportunity cost right there? Will it be worth it? And if they think it's worth it, you're going to go ahead and do it. So the penalty structure has given them a kind of a way out, or a direction in where they want to, in how to make plans going forward. So they should. So what the best solution to this is, remove the categories of minor or major breach. You just put it down. A breach is a breach, and these are the list of penalties that would be available to you if you go over the cap. End of story. And we wouldn't have this problem.
Breach is a breach is a breach.
Breach is a breach. It's like you kill. I always use terminology of killing somebody. You kill somebody, right? You shoot them one time. You shoot them one time, but someone shoot that person 100 times. At the end of the day, you kill them. It doesn't matter how many, whether it's one shot or 100 shots. The penalty for murder is the penalty for murder. So we should. Why are we splitting it up into categories?
I suppose
teams.
To draw out your analogy, Thanos, I suppose it's murder versus manslaughter, right? The difference between the two being mens rea or intent, but again, good looks passing and splicing out intent from those financial stuff. I will say this as well, Thanos.
But you should shoot someone multiple times and it still be classed as manslaughter.
Well, not really. Not really. Unless you declare them insane. Mens rea is just very difficult to prove, and I don't want to get into the common law terminology, but I will give you a flowers, Thanos, with the opportunity cost terminology. I love a bit of that. Go on then, Sahel. I'm going to give you the final word. Sahel, and then Carl, if you want to speak, mate, and then I'm going to wrap because I need to not get divorced around here. Go ahead, sir.
Cameron, I'm going to keep it very short and simple and just give you another example of another sport, right? And basically what happened today, right? Okay, so I'm pretty sure other people watch other sports here and whatnot. Okay, so I'm going to give you a good example here, and you can understand where I'm going with this, right? So it was Liverpool versus City. Jurgen Klopp, I would say, influenced the referee or was shouting in his face. Today we found out that he only gets 30,000 fine, no touchline ban, nothing like that, and he walks away. So basically, he's influenced. He's got a fine. He said sorry, and he moves on. And I think that's what Red Bull's done, right? So basically, they understood that they might get a fine. They'd basically get away with it. They've upgraded their car in such a way, used certain upgrades in such a way that they've closed the gap, overcome Mercedes, and said sorry and move on. No one's going to do anything about it. And I think that's what it is, right? So it
I think that
happens.
analogy works. I don't think that analogy works though, because the issue with Klopp, you're talking about the Klopp, he didn't influence anyone.
Well, I think he did.
Thanos is going to say that because he'll just defend anything
No,
Liverpool does.
no,
full
because
stop, so that's fine.
he's talking
think he
about
did.
Klopp was sent off for shouting at the linesman because the linesman didn't give a foul on Mohamed Salah. So how did he influence anyone?
Well, basically he's got his word across, and whatever happens afterwards, there's going to stay in the
Nothing
referee's head.
Nothing happened after. He got
I
sent off
understand,
for
but
abuse.
what I'm trying to say, I'm not going to get into too much detail there, Thanos, right? But what I'm trying to say here, that any other manager or anyone else, you would have probably expected that guy probably gets a touchline ban, or he misses a game, right? I mean, at the end of the day, he's got £30,000 fine. He's not going to get no touchline ban or anything like that, and he moves on. He said sorry. Even he's probably surprised that he didn't get a touchline ban. A bit like Red Bull, they knew what they were doing. Like they knew that they're breaking the cost cap. I mean, they're sponsored by Oracle, right? Like Oracle, the database. Use your database properly or something. Like that, I mean, at the end of the day, like they know what they're doing. They know what kind of fines they're going to get as well. They know what's going to happen, but they also know that the fine's probably not going to overweigh what they've actually managed to achieve on the track.
So let me ask you a question very quickly, and I'm going to wrap on this definitely a risk of opening a massive can of worms here. You're the FOM, right? So the commercial rights holder. Obviously, you've got to put Ferrari because of their legacy. So do you not feel like you owe them a duty of care? You kind of, let's enter in, let's do an ABA with them because they're Red Bull. They won or didn't win last year's championship. They're going to win this. Well, they've won this one. They've won the constructors. Do you not need to keep Red Bull in the sport if you want to continue growing it like they have done over the last 2 or 3 years, and so kind of treat them kindly with kid clubs, etc.?
I think you do, Cameron, because at the end of the day, they know the kind of product that they're going with this whole F1, right? They know what's happening here. They know that basically what they've been able to do with the whole Red Bull and Mercedes, and obviously put Ferrari in there. They know where they're going with the product. It's an entertainment product, all right. So I think they know what they're doing here with Red Bull as well. It's a bit like they've managed to get this unbelievable wave of audience through Netflix. They've got this. They've managed to do certain things that they've never been able to do previously with this whole social media, with the whole Netflix stuff, with the whole digital world that they're in. They need this drama. It's a bit like, again, it comes down to football. Like some of the VAR decisions and everything like that are absolutely crazy, but people talk about it. It's a product. It's an entertainment thing. It's like it's one of those things that certain things they let them slip for certain reasons, and it's all to do with entertainment and basically keeping people talking. And I think that's what they've done with Red Bull as well. They know exactly what Red Bull have done. They know that they've basically broken the rules. They've broken the rules are the rules, of course, but I don't know, man. They're there to be broken, right? And cause havoc, and that's what Red Bull have done.
So how, finally, I'll pass to Shez very quickly, my brother from another mother. But so how don't Klopp will get the same treatment? Why? If Klopp leaves the EPL tomorrow, I'm not saying viewing figures aren't going to fall off a cliff or anything, but the product that is the English Premier League will be less for the absence of Jurgen Klopp, right? And so referees and not the FIA. I can't remember what they're the FA. Sorry, bloody Nora. You never know how much football. The FA are going to be cognizant of this, and that will drip feed down into the suspensions that they hand down to Jurgen Klopp. Is that not the right thing to do as a business making business decisions, sir?
I think so, Cameron. I mean, look, Sir, look, I support United. I remember, look, at the end of the day, I know exactly what Sir Alex Ferguson got away with. I know that Pep Guardiola, right? He basically absolutely goes hammer, right, in the referees' faces and things like that, and he gets away with it, right? Certain people and certain clubs or certain, let's say, teams, also, like, you know, going back into F1, they will get away with it. It's as simple as that. It's a whole product. They know what they're doing. They know numbers talks. It's in black and white, right? So of course, look. They've broken the rules at the end of the day. Like the fine should be absolutely, like, you know, it should be in such a way that it impacts them and it damages them for next season. But they won't do it in such a way where Red Bull can turn around and say, listen, like, if that's the case, we've said sorry, we want to move on, and you're not letting us move on. We've given so much to the sport, blah blah blah. Like they can turn around and do all sorts of things as well. It's a bit like the Ferrari brand, like they pay Ferrari to stay in. Like Ferrari could just throw their toys out the pram and say, listen, we're going to leave, and then all of a sudden they'll be like, no, don't leave. We'll give you another 60 million or something, or we'll give you a certain percentage of the whole, you know, the money that we earn, because you're Ferrari. We need the brand to stay in. It's like people get special treatment. We know that. It is what it is. It's the whole entertainment. It's what they've built on. So, you know what, right? I'm a bit disappointed with the whole thing, but at the same time, like, I'm just looking at other sports. I'm just looking at how other people have got away with certain things and whatnot. The bigger you are, the more important you are at that time, you will get away with certain things. Like that happens with managers. That happens with, you know, like decisions. That happens with the referee swaying to big teams at home. In a football, you know, when it comes to football, it happens. I'm there, and I've looked at it and I thought, hold up a second, that's not a penalty, and it's been given sometimes. Like it's just bizarre, but it does happen, Cameron. Let's not be naive about it. Like Red Bull are a big team. They're a big say in the F1 world now. So they know exactly what they were doing. The FIA know exactly what they're doing as well with this fine. They've basically come in more or less in the middle, and they've probably just said, you know what, we're going to fine you, make a little statement, and that's it. Let's just move on. And that's exactly what they've been doing with everything that's been happening with Max and Red Bull. Anyway, there are certain other bigger things that I think that they've got away with, and they've not done anything about it. And this is just, you know, this is another thing. But yeah, but people will get away with it depending on who you are. Definitely.
Absolutely, mate. It feels like damn near the cost of doing business at the moment in F1. It's a nonsense. Go on then, Shez, mate. To you, I give the final word, sir.
Yes, the final word. Cam, I'm really sorry, man. I'm gonna let you get on really quickly. I just want to make two really quick points. It's basically an answer to what you and Sahel are saying. Number one, you cannot compare Red Bull that started in 2005 to Ferrari, the oldest team in the championship. They've been to every single race that has ever been. No, you also can't compare Red Bull that started in 2005 to Manchester United that have been there since the beginning of the Premiership and have won every title ever and had the greatest success ever. It's not possible. Red Bull's biggest asset at the moment is numero uno, Max Verstappen. Second biggest asset, Adrian Newey. You take those two things away, Red Bull have nothing. And if you tell me, right, that if Red Bull were told, you have to, this is your penalty, and they turned around and said, we're out of here, are you telling me that Max Verstappen's going to go as well? I doubt it. And do you think that Max Verstappen won't find another seat on the grid? I doubt it. He'll end up anywhere on the grid, and any team will be happy to have him. He will still be a force anywhere. And all of your orange army will still come. They don't come in for Red Bull. They don't wear Red Bull memorabilia on their heads unless it's bright orange. So as much as I understand your whole, like both of you guys saying, oh, but F1 have got a lot to owe a lot to Red Bull, and Red Bull make up such a big part of it. Look, man, Red Bull get a lot out of F1 as well. I've said this to you before. And ultimately, If they go, their biggest asset will not go. And Adrian Newey is not going to go either. He'll find somewhere else and he'll build another competitive car. And if that's with Max Verstappen, well, are we then going to be complaining about Aston Martin suddenly being the big bad boys on the F1 grid? I don't know, man. I don't see it as a Red Bull thing. Anyway, that was it. Mate, great space as usual. Everyone in the space, you're all awesome. Thanks.
Shez, don't go nowhere, man. I'm going to have to come back at you for that because whilst it sounds very brilliant in theory, in practice, we know things are very different. There is a cost of business to be done here. And of course, that's at play. You've got to foster rapport with your key stakeholders always, Shez. Always. And Red Bull right now are the keyest of stakeholder. Take off your gatekeeping cap for a second, Shez. I know your old F1 heritage and Ferrari have competed in every season, ever, yada, yada. Yeah, that's all very well and good. But don't forget Wu-Tang always said, cash rules everything around me, cream. Get the money. And who, as far as the 10 teams on the grid, is more of a commodity to the FOM, the commercial rights holder, at this point in time, October 2022, than Red Bull, Shez?
Max Verstappen. It's not Red Bull, man. Like, Max could be driving at Haas, and Haas would suddenly be that team that you're talking about, and Haas would suddenly be the team that you're going, oh my god, F1 can't do without them. It's not the team, and it never has been about the team unless it's Ferrari. It's nearly always about the driver. This new sort of thing about I really support a team is a new thing, right? It was never I really support McLaren. You know, I'm a lifelong McLaren fan. No, I've been a Senna fan. I've been a Prost fan. I've been a Lewis fan. You know, that's where everyone's loyalties lie, and they still lie in that direction now. Last season, how many people really in 10 years' time are going to remember that Merck won the Constructors' title last year? They're not. All they're going to be talking about is the Drivers' Championship, because that's all that matters. And I take your point, right? If you were to say Red Bull have put a huge amount of money and time into motorsport, I would not disagree with you. All right. And yes, there is an argument to say that, you know, that F1 owes something to their competitors, but that doesn't mean that the competitors can go out and break the rules and then have no blowback, right? Because that then, one, sets a precedent, and number two, it tells the other teams on the grid that you just don't care about them. And maybe they don't, but that's a grid with 5 teams on it is not the same as a grid with 10 teams on it. And that's what you're looking at if the budget cap isn't enforced properly.
Says you're a purist, and I admire and respect it, but there are holes in your argument, Shez. Sadly, I think you missed Nash's soliloquy earlier. Nasha said that basically sport and corruption are cozy bedfellows. They're always going to be that, right? Because the FOM don't run the sport for the same thing that me and you watch it, Shez. But there is a conflict in terms of our priorities. Of course, I want to see Max Verstappen and Sir Lewis Hamilton go wheel to wheel, a bit of automotive pugilism. That's what I'm in it for. But the FOM have a very different agenda from that. They're in it for the bottom line. Since Liberty Media came in, Liberty Media are a media company, Shez. That says it all, mate. It's whilst I agree with you, that's who I am to my core. I don't want to see that necessarily. But 2022, Shez, that's what we're looking at here. And the joke is, you know, and they say that money is the root of all evil. All these things that we've talked about thus far in the space, the incompetence of the FIA, consistent inconsistency, the rule set being written like it's like a 5-year-old's written it, all this stuff, even like Herbie Blash and bloody Freitas, these guys alternating their stewardship and race control, race to race. The root of all evil is always green. I will end the space on this. Cash rules everything around me, cream. Get the money. Dollar bills, yo. Quick couple of shout outs. Shout out to Kyle. Shout out to those guys. I know a couple of people requested, but I feel that the speaker place is too quick. Shout out to the Pit Stop Fracker guys, JP1, legend. graphic designer of Red Bull, Thanos, of course, Mary, everybody there, Rainmaker, also legend. If I've missed anybody, Becca, I think I saw as well. I apologise. I'm going to wrap on there for fear that I get divorce for staying on Twitter Spaces too long and chatting about all things F1. Who am I giving MVP to here? I would be remiss not to give the MVP of the space to rational-minded Thanos. Wait, who is this dude? I don't even know you anymore, Thanos.
Sorry, I don't want it. Take it. I don't want it.
I have to. I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it to you, Thanos.
I don't want it. That's not. No. Give it to somebody else.
This is my space, Thanos, and this is not a democracy. I'm giving.
Thanos, I don't deal with democracy. I'm a dictator, so I don't want it. Keep it.
Well, when it's your space, you can deal with the dictatorship. But for now, this is my space, Thanos, and for the rational-minded thought that this new Thanos, I don't know who that is. But anyway, I'm giving a space to Thanos. Listen, have a fantastic weekend, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy the racing over the weekend. Hopefully we'll catch up. Watch alongs on Cameron F1 channel. Yeah, it's going to be a madness. Mexico Grand Prix. Between now and then, love, peace, and chicken grease.